All right, guys, so I went through my closet. I was actually looking for something, and I found a little small shoebox that had some photos in it. I have tons more car photos somewhere. I need to find them, but anyway, these I thought it'd be pretty interesting and then tell the story about some of this stuff. But I've been a hardcore car nut all my life, and I've owned lots and lots of cars. Lots of Tri-5 Chevys and lots of G-bodies. I've actually owned more G-bodies than Tri-5 Chevys, but I used to really be ate up in the 90s, the late 90s to early 2000s in Tri-5 Chevys, or G-bodies, not Tri-5s. But so I fixed up this four-door. It's a 210 four-door 55 sedan, and I drove it for a long time, probably a year or 2 years, I don't even remember. And I ran into a guy at a store one day, and he asked me if I would be interested in trading this for a 70 Chevelle convertible, just a Malibu 350 car. And anyway, I said, well, I'll go look at it, and that's it right there. That was a 70-something thousand original miles 70 Chevelle Malibu convertible, 350 automatic, power steering, power brakes, and air conditioning. So back in the 90s, this four-door 55, even painted up and done up, is not worth what that car would have been in, with me doing that work to it. Now, I can't find my after picture of this, but I painted this car root beer pearl, had a white convertible top I put on. I didn't do anything to the interior. The seats were nice. It was all black vinyl bench seat car. There wasn't a rip in them, so I just left it in there. I did replace the carpet. I put 17-inch torque thrust 2s on it, and I think that's it. I drove it for just a little bit, and I ended up selling it to a guy in another town over from where we lived. This is the second Mustang GT50 I bought for my wife back in the early 90s. I ended up painting that car yellow and lowering it and putting centerline hammers on it, shaved the door handles, did a bunch of custom stuff to it. This is a funny story. It's a 56 Buick four-door hardtop that I bought for $600 out of a salvage yard. And the guy told me that they actually drove it back there like 20 years ago, from the time when I bought this. This was probably around 1999, somewhere in there. So anyway, I drug it into the shop, kind of cleaned the points on it, and took the carburetor apart, cleaned it up the best I could, and then patched it back together. I poured some gas down it. I got it to where it would run off of a gas jug, and we had it run inside the shop, and the door was closed because I think it was wintertime, if I remember right. It was cold, and the exhaust was completely plugged up from a mouse nest or a rat nest. The mice or whatever climbed up in there and plugged that muffler up. So I left it sitting in there running it, and I was sitting there revving it up and everything, and all of a sudden it just sounded like a gunshot went off. It exploded the muffler apart in that thing. And anyway, it's just a funny story. I ended up selling that. This is a 77 Corvette I bought out of a field. It didn't run. It had been sitting for a long time. I ended up putting another 350 in it. I think that's before I put the engine in it. But I'd painted it magenta pearl. This was probably 1996, 1995, somewhere in there, 94. And I put some, I don't remember what wheels those were. And this one's pretty cool. I bought this all original 46 Plymouth Business Coupe from my banker, and it had, I don't remember what engine it had. It had the original engine, I just don't remember what it was, what cubic inch and all that stuff. I ended up putting a 3.8 carbureted Buick V6 in there, and got it to where it would run and move, but I never did do the brakes on it, and I ended up selling it. This is an 81 Cutlass that I bought that I ended up painting winter mint green, and it was lowered, and I had SS Monte Carlo wheels on it. This was 1992 or 91 when I built it. That was back when those pastel colors were popular. But anyway, I lowered it, put a small block Chevy 305 in it, and I actually showed that car a little bit back then. This is an 87 SS Monte Carlo that I built and lowered. It's got 20s on the back, 18s on the front. I did everything. I did the bodywork, the paint. I had the interior done. It had a dome piston small block in it and 100 shot or 125 shot of nitrous on it. That car went 1197, I think, is the fastest that car went in the quarter mile. There's a 55 Nomad that I bought as a basket case. I ended up selling it before I got it running. I did make an attempt at just putting it together in some red oxide primer, but I have an old video of my barn find 55 four-door I bought for my wife. That car's sitting there beside it. This is, I'm glad it's got a date on it, this is a 55 four-door. This is me at the Midnight Drags at Tulsa, and a friend of mine's wife took this picture. I showed up there in that. This is a coral and gray 55 four-door Bel Air, all original. It had like 89,000 original miles on it or something like that. Still had the original jack and everything. That was a nice car. I sold it on eBay. I had an 80, I think it was, El Camino that I had painted up and lowered. It was a really nice truck. And I traded it straight across for this. It's an 87 Grand National Buick. That's the day that they unloaded it off the trailer. And that is what it looked like afterwards. I repainted it, put new carpet in it, kind of fixed it up a little bit. That ended up being a nice car. I sold it. This is my first hardtop, 2007. That's when I got my first hardtop. I'd done outside body work there in the driveway and put it in black primer. It was a red and white car originally, but anyway, I put black primer on it. I ended up primering the hood later, but I put a small block in it and I drove it like that for a while. This is a 86, I think it was, Buick Regal. This had a 305 Chevy small block in it, all original car. I bought that out behind a wrecking towing yard, and they did have the title for it. And he said the motor was blown up in it. It was his brother's wife's car. They used to drive it all the time. They said the engine blew up, so they parked it in the back with all the other cars that got towed in. I bought that car for $100, and he towed it to my house, and I opened the hood and got to messing with it, and the fuel filter in the Quadrajet was clogged up. I put like a $4 filter in that thing, and I drove that car. I don't remember what I ever did with that. I think I sold it, I don't remember. Another 87 Grand National I drug in and did work too. It's a 85, I think, SS Monte Carlo that I drug in, and I think I put an engine in it and then sold it. I think I painted the hood black and then sold it. It's an 87 Turbo T. This car run mid to low 12-second quarter miles. I had a few little things done to it. I ended up blowing that car up. I got on it one day driving it, hot rodding it around, and threw the rod through the block. It trashed the block. I ended up parting that car out. This is if I'm going off memory, I think this is a 70. This was a real deal 383 automatic Cuda, a real Cuda. And it was rough, man. That car was beat up. And this is my dad, my mom, and me. My wife took the picture. We were trying to body work it. I was going to paint that car Sublime Pearl. I don't remember what the original color of that was. This is a car I met my wife in. This was an 82 Monte Carlo, and I'd painted it white, put SS Monte Carlo wheels on it. I had red scallops on the front. This was about 1991, early 1991. I don't remember what I was doing here with all the front end tore off of it. And then this is a car I met my wife in. This is an 81 Buick, or Pontiac Grand Prix. And she had that up until when we got married, then we sold it. And I ended up putting that money and borrowing a little extra, and we got actually an 86 GT50, a red one that I don't have a picture of. This is a 56 four-door Bel Air that I drug in, and it did have the front clip on it, and it had a small block in it, but it was locked up. And I ended up driving it for a long time, and then put it in primer and lowered it and put some Connington wheels on it and stuff, and ended up selling it. They finished that car out. It looks awesome. This is a 87 Luxury Sport Monte Carlo. When I bought it, it was wrecked in the front, and then I found another front clip from a salvage and put it on there, and I ended up selling this to a friend of mine. I think I gave $300 for this car, and it was nice, but I think it had 97,000 miles on it, which, you know, is not really, to me, high mileage, but that was back in the 90s, so it wasn't that old of a car back then, you know what I mean? It's kind of neat to see them pictures, and I can remember just about everything on these things, but I got a ton more pictures. I've probably had more G-bodies than a lot of people have ever even imagine owning. I had tons of them. I bought from my banker that I bought this Plymouth from. His mom, he ended up putting her in a home, a retirement home. She had an 85 or 86 Buick Regal that was beautiful. It had 43,000 miles on it. That thing was mint. And she got rear-ended by somebody. And I bought that car for, I think, $400, and my buddy drove it home. But the whole tail end was so smashed you couldn't even see out the back window. My buddy drove it home for me about 30 minutes. And I rode his butt all the way home, so I was his brake lights. It was kind of silly that we did that, but that V6 that was in that car is the one that wound up in this Plymouth. We lived in a house over at Grand Lake, and I had a shop over there, but out in the back behind, there was usually anywhere from 8 to 10 G-bodies at any given time sitting back there. I remember buying another Buick Regal that had a digital dash, which I still have the digital dash in my attic. Is a digital dash car. It had been wrecked in the front, and I got it running, and I drove it around in the yard, but I never did anything else with it. I ended up parting it out. But I think I had 3 Cutlasses. 2 of them were Calais, which were console bucket seat cars. It's that's pretty awesome, man. I had a lot of cars, lots of cars. But I wish I'd have kept that 70 Malibu convertible. That was a beautiful car when I was done with it. I drove that car to Kansas City, Missouri one time and back. Well, I guess that's it. That's just a little script of the life here, but I was actually looking for a photo of me and my wife from 1991 when we first met and started dating, and I can't find it. It's probably with all the other stuff, but all I can find is this picture here of us. This was my sister-in-law and her brother was into photography, and they did it for a profession, and they took these pictures of us. They did a bunch of different pictures, but that is not the picture I was looking for, because today's our 30th anniversary. I was looking for that picture from when we met. I've got a mullet I was going to show you guys, but I can't find it. I don't know what I did with it. I found it. I forgot she'd put it in a little frame. So that is us when this was like our second date. Pretty awesome. Me sticking my tongue out like a dummy. I got braces, and I actually had hair back then. See it down there on my shoulder? Wow. Sure do miss my hair.